We're at Brawley Stadium inside the Grady Lyles Hospitality Room for this Lion legend. Joining us for this week's edition, Jerry Hill. Jerry, thank you for taking the time to catch up with us.
I appreciate you having me.
You played at UNA from 1977 to 1980. You're on UNA's first Gulf South Conference championship team, first NCAA playoff team. We'll talk about all of that. Stint in the NFL, great coaching career. Your father, Harlan, as well. We're going to go through it all, but let's just start off for the Hill family. The University of North Alabama, what does this place mean to you?
Well, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the University of North Alabama. You know, they accepted me as a freshman and out of a rural country school, and, you know, I had a lot of great professors, of course, coaches. Coach Long and Dr. Taft were big mentors in my life, so, you know, it really shaped the person who I am today. So I owe a big gratitude to the University of North Alabama.
So let's start this story with your father, Harlan Hill. What was it like growing up with Harlan Hill, the NFL legend, the UNA legend that he is, as your father?
Well, it was pretty neat, but, you know, people that knew my dad, he was a very humble man, so I didn't find a lot of information out for him. You know, he didn't talk about himself. I had to do a lot of reading and research, but of course, all our family and his friends and his brother Dawell, which played here as a quarterback too. A lot of people don't realize my daddy's brother Dawell was a quarterback for UNA, and so, you know, Dawell would keep me informed on Daddy, and, you know, being a rookie of the year in the field. Daddy was very humble. He didn't talk about himself very much, but it was very neat to know that my dad played in the NFL and won all those honors. It was really neat growing up.
The University of North Alabama, he was on some of the first football teams in school history, playing under House Self. Did he ever talk much about what it was like when he played at UNA?
He did. You know, he talked about Coach Self a lot. You know, Coach Self was a father figure to him, and George Weeks, of course, Bull Weeks, you know, and I got to know Coach Weeks well because I was the ball boy. Daddy later came back and coached a little bit at UNA, coached the receivers. So when he did that, I got to be the ball boy and be around Coach Weeks, who had coached Dad in his previous years. And so Coach Self and Coach Weeks were really good mentors to my dad, yes.
Of course, NFL MVP in 1954. He still holds 15 Chicago Bears franchise records, really belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame. That's a story for another day. But what are some NFL stories or memories he used to share with you?
Well, you know, the biggest one I remember is when, you know, he would, probably for his size and speed, he was way before his time. You know, he would fit in perfect, you know, with the NFL wide receivers now. You know, he's about 6'5", 225, and, you know, back then he ran a 9.900, which was unheard of in those days. So he was a little bit before his time. And so, you know, one of the biggest things I remember is when probably his career-ending injury. And as I got older, we got to go to some of the games in Chicago, and it was a snow-covered field, and he went out for a long pass, and he went down, and, you know, he came off limping. He had tore his Achilles tendon in half, you know. So back then they didn't have the technology and the medical advances like they do now. So it was sort of a career-ending injury, and that's one of the most vivid memories I have, because I was old enough to actually be at that game and understand what was going on. But he told me some stories about Coach Self and the McCaskies that actually owned the Bears. Miss McCaskey took up with my mother, and they became lifelong friends. She actually flew in for my daddy's funeral when he passed away, and then when my mother passed away, she sent big Chicago Bears wreath. So, you know, the Chicago Bears were sort of like North Alabama. Instead of just being a big NFL franchise, they were like a family. You know, they took my daddy in. My daddy had never been on a bus till they put him on a bus here and sent him to Chicago. So they took him in and took care of it. So, you know, the Bears were a big part of his life, yeah.
Now, a few weeks ago, there was a social media video circulating of an old clip of your father playing for the Chicago Bears.
Later in the quarter, the Bears are on the prowl again. Redkowski hoists a hefty heave to Harlan Hill. For rookies, these boys are performing like old pros. The play goes 64 yards for a touchdown.
Do you have any memories of any plays or any film that you might
still
have?
Oh, yes. I've got several. Back then they had the 16mm film, so I've got several game films when he played. The one we were playing against, I think it was the Giants, when he caught the juggling pass going in the end zone and won the, you know, back then it was in the NFL championship game. So yeah, I've got several game films, you know, of him when he played for the Bears. Yeah.
1986, the Harlan Hill Trophy was created as the Heisman for Division II football. For the Hill family, for your father, what did that mean?
Well, it was just awesome. You know, we never believed when it after that first year, you know, and Grady and his bunch got it off the ground and got going. So after that first year, we never dreamed it would grow that big, you know, especially when they had the national championship game here. They would have the Harlan Hill Trophy Award the night before. Both teams would be there, all the coaches. I mean, you couldn't get any more people in the Marriott, and it grew into an event that my father never dreamed it would get that big. So.
And now today, the Little Rock Touchdown Club in Arkansas has taken over the presentation of the trophy. I think a lot of people probably weren't aware of that, but what kind of job have they done keeping the legacy moving?
They've done a really good job because they give a lot of awards on that one night. You know, like when I went last year to present Daddy's Award, Cliff Harris was there and got to talk with him. They gave him an award, and 2 days later he was inducted to the NFL Hall of Fame. Willie Ruff was there. So that was inducted the same day. So they have a big banquet, and they have a lot of, Dan Hampton's really involved, who actually was a defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears, played D2 football. So he's the president of the Touchdown Club there in Little Rock. So he sort of took over, didn't want Division II to die, and they've done a really good job of, because we were worried what was going to happen to that trophy, because, you know, understandably when UNA going Division I, the NCAA wouldn't let them give out that Division II trophy, so we knew it was going to have to be moved, and we didn't really know where. And then we met with the group from Arkansas, and man, they had it planned out, and the last 2 years it's gone like clockwork. They do a really good job.
So you mentioned him, Grady Lyles. We're in the Grady Lyles Sportsman's Club, and we all know the impact Grady had on UNA. You throw in a name of George Lindsey. So for you as well, growing up around so many UNA celebrities, what sort of impact did they have on you?
It was awesome. You know, I get to go with Dad and go to Nashville. George, we called him Goober, you know, so he lived in Nashville. And I get to go with Dad. I had 4 sisters, so I got to go travel with my dad a lot. So, you know, we'd go to Nashville and stay at George Lindsey's house, and then when he'd come back to homecoming and different events at UNA, he would stay at our house. And Mike Dick has been in town several times and stayed at our house. So I was very fortunate to be around Gale Sayers, you know, especially a lot of those old Bear players. You know, I've had become acquaintances with them, and you know, Coach Dick, he took me in. You know, I've got his cell phone number. You know, his health is not well now, but you know, those are some of the greatest things that I treasure. Are some of those Chicago Bears greats that I still have friendships and contacts with now.
All right, so let's dive deep into your story now. A 4-sport athlete at Brooks High School. Take us back to the glory days, the Friday night lights. What kind of high school athlete experiences did you have?
I couldn't ask for any. We were, my junior year, we were really good. We were 10-1 and got beat in the semifinals back then you had 10 teams in the region. So if you lost one game, you didn't go to the playoffs. Well, we'd beaten Hazelwood during the regular season 7-6, and then we got upset by Hatton. So at the end of the year, we were tied 1-1. So the ASHA, we had to have a play-in game to get in the playoffs. So, and back then you only played 3 games because only one team went from each region, so you didn't have as many rounds in the playoffs. And they kicked the field goal, and we'd beat them 7-6 early in the year. They kicked the field goal and beat us 10-7. Then the next week they won the state championship 54-0. So, you know, I had a great high school experience, great teammates, great coaches. Got to play for my father, and Coach Jackie Ferguson came in and took over. So I had some Coach Jim Smith was our offensive coordinator and was my head basketball coach, and that's where I was blessed. I had so many great mentors, not only good coaches, but really good men that mentored me outside of football, and that even carried on when I came to UNA with Coach Grubb and his staff.
So let's talk about your arrival at UNA. 1977, Wayne Grubb, first year as head coach. He replaced Mickey Andrews. Your recruitment, not just to UNA, but what was that experience like going through the recruitment process to play college football?
It was special to me. I mean, it wasn't as big a deal as it is now. You know, you might go to 1 game or 2 games. You didn't get the 5 official visits back then, and but the biggest thing is there wasn't a lot of social media back then. So whoever recruited your area, you saw them a lot in person. They would come to your school. So that was the biggest thing, getting to meet all, you know, these offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators from these schools to come in and recruit you. So that's the biggest thing I remember. It was a great experience.
Now, given the role that your father, guys like Grady Lyles, George Lindsey, did you feel pressure to come to UNA?
Oh, yeah. One thing I can honestly say, my dad never pressured me to go to UNA, never. He told me it's my decision. He'd support me in anything that I chose to do. But outside of our family, yes, you know, people's like, you got to go to UNA. You know, your dad played here. That'd be so special for this town, this university, and that's what I chose to do. I did.
So you arrive on campus 1977. Wayne Grubb is head coach. What was that first year like?
It was of course, I came from you only had 4 classifications back then in high school instead of 7, and we were 2A, so we were middle of the road, not real big, but not real small. And it was an eye-opening experience when I came to college as a freshman. You know, I wasn't redshirted, which I look back now, I wish I would have been. You know, I got to play some as a freshman, but they took me in. Had some great teammates on that. The seniors on that team, because when you come in as a freshman, you know, we were wide-eyed, scared, didn't really know what to expect. But had some really, really good seniors that took us freshmen in, showed us ropes, took care of us. And Coach Grubb and his staff was phenomenal. That was his first year, and you know, he was trying to build a foundation and set a foundation. The biggest thing I remember about Coach Grubb, I've got a picture at home from Lauderdale County, Colbert County, and Franklin County. There's 27 of us on that team that were local guys. So that's one of the biggest things I remember. He started with your local players, I'm sure to help with the fan base, but we were really good players too on top of that. So that's the biggest thing I remember Coach Grubb doing.
Okay, you led UNA in receiving twice, finished second another year. 61 catches, 1,138 yards, 18.6 yards per catch. Your father, he averaged 20 yards a catch in the NFL. Big play wide receivers. How did your style of football maybe compare to the way he played?
Well, our style and his style was sort of similar. You know, we didn't spread, nobody spread the field back then. Everybody was option team. You were either wishbone or power out and run the option, and you know, that's what we did. We were an option team at UNA, but you know, on play action pass, when you caught the ball, it was usually a big play. So you know, I was blessed. That's one of the reasons you had 18 yards of catch, because you know, they play the option, you run your play action. And same thing with my dad. You know, that's what's amazing, that he still holds all those Bears records, because they didn't throw the ball a whole lot. But when he came onto the scene, him and Sid Luckman changed the style of play in the NFL from old grinding out to opening up passing, you know. So he's sort of known as what changed the NFL to throwing it around the field. Yep.
Now, with both of you playing the same position, very similar numbers as well, did he give you good advice playing?
Oh yeah, yeah. He coached me all the way, you know, all the way up. And I played wide receiver till my senior year. We had a really good quarterback that had graduated. We didn't really have anybody, so they moved me to quarterback my senior year. But I'd always played wide receiver, and of course, yeah, he worked with me, you know, showing just little things, you know, head nods, steps, foot movement, you know, how to set up DB. So that was where I think I was ahead as a freshman with most of them coming in, because I'd been coached with my father, which, you know, he knew what was really, you know, what was going on. I got some really good coaching at school and at home.
We're about to talk about the 1980 season, but first, the years leading up to that. Wayne Grubb takes over. What were the steps, I guess, leading up to 80 that prepared the program to really take off?
Well, we had some really tough practice, some really tough fall camps, because, you know, Coach Grubb was a hard-nosed coach now, and if you made it, you were going to be dedicated and you were a team player. So, you know, we gradually got better every year, and we had a really good group of seniors my senior year, but we weren't overly blessed with talent. We'd lost some really good players from the last 2 years. I think we were picked probably in the bottom of the conference that year, but you know, we all came in as freshmen. I think that was the key thing that Coach Grubb did. He signed a bunch of freshmen locally, and we all stayed together. We didn't lose any. And you know, we probably had 20, 21 seniors my senior year, and I think that was key. And we just got better every year. We cared about each other. We were a true team. We played well together, no jealousy. We didn't care who ran. We didn't care who threw it. We didn't care who caught. We just wanted to win. And I think you can ask any of my teammates that, and they'll tell you the same thing.
We talked a lot through the last couple months about the 1980 team. We had the reunion earlier this summer. We've talked with you as well, but that season, the first Gulf South Conference championship in program history, the first playoff appearance in program history. For you, what was so special and memorable?
Well, that year was a lot of special things. If I'm not mistaken, that's the first year Raleigh opened up being remodeled, or either the year before. We played Middle Tennessee State, a big school, you know, and we beat them 31-6. I'll never forget that game. And, you know, after the game, we sort of like, hey, you know, we may have something special here, you know, because we were underdogs in that game, and we got better. Played Troy before we played Jacksonville in the middle of the year, they had Willie Tullis, who signed in the NFL at quarterback. We beat them here at Raleigh. So, things just sort of picked up, and we gained confidence as we went. By about the 7th game, we were like, hey, we can win this thing.
Let's talk about the catch. Jacksonville State, the 83-yard bomb from Fred Riley. It was a de facto conference championship game, final game of the season down in Jacksonville. Closing seconds of the game. Take us through it one more time.
Yep. Well, back then, your conference winner got the automatic bid, and then they had just a few at-large bids. So we knew going in we'd have to win that game, because Jack State had been the perennial power, and we knew if they won, they would get the automatic bid, and we really came out of nowhere, so we were scared we wouldn't get a bid. So we knew we had to win that football game, and we played really well. We went down there, and they had an exceptional quarterback. They had a guy named Ed Lett, went on to the Canadian League, broke all kind of records. Our defense played phenomenal for about 3.5 quarters. Then Ed Lett got pretty hot. We had, I think, a 14-point lead, and they tied it up, made it, I think it's 28-28 with about 17 or 20 seconds left. And we had the ball about on our own 30, got a penalty. I think it was backed up to 17. But we had an All-American field goal kicker named Nelson McMurrin. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. He could make it 60 yards. 60 yards was in his range. So that was our thinking. Hey, we got to get across midfield to give Nelson a chance. And so we tried a couple of screen plays or something. We ended up 3rd and 17 or something like that. And, we were deciding what we were going to do. And Coach Jack Crow was our offensive coordinator. So he called the play, and Fred Riley was our quarterback. And it was really a high-low read where I cleared out the safety. I was a wide out. Mike Gilly was our tight end. He run a deep out. So Fred had a read on it. Well, we ran it. The quarterback corner stumbled a little bit for Jacksonville, so I got behind him, and man, Fred threw me you couldn't have laid it in there any better. Fred put it, and next thing I knew, it happened so fast, I was in the end zone, and never forget it. Never forget it.
So that final year, you guys make the playoffs, and then you get to play in a nationally televised playoff game as well.
First time I think UNA played on ESPN, yes, right here at Raleigh.
And that senior year, capping it off with that, how memorable was that?
It was awesome. Those memories, and a lot of us teammates still. We communicate. I talked to a couple of them last night on Facebook. We'll see things and talk to each other. That was it's one of those special years where everything just came together. Great group of guys that going to be successful in whatever they've done. Hamp Moore, he wasn't even from here, but he stayed here, stayed in this area. Optometrist Jeff Patterson from Central. We just had tons of guys that we believed in each other, and we cared about each other. We were coachable, and man, we got that first ring. We all still got it. It's just amazing, amazing.
So you finished up playing in 1980. Did you expect the NFL to be your next stop?
Well, I hadn't thought about it much till my senior year, and then we had some scouts start coming through, watching practice. We had a few scouts coming to the game. I started getting some literature in the mail, so I knew there was a chance, but I thought maybe free agent. I may get a free agent tryout somewhere, and on the day of the draft, of course, it wasn't a big deal like it is now. They didn't bring you in, and I was actually at Sky Park playing golf. And didn't have cell phones back then, so George Allen was the owner of Sky Park, and he got a call. I think Grady called. Grady had called my daddy. He said, I think he's playing golf. I said, well, he just got drafted by the Redskins. So they came out there on a golf cart and told me, hey, you've been drafted. You got to get down to UNA. So that's how I found out. Yep.
So let's talk about the draft process. Today, there's the combine in Indiana. They got regional combines. You throw in social media as well. For you, what was that process like?
Now, they did the same thing, except you didn't have the combine. They came to your school, scouts from teams. Like you might have 7 scouts in there from 7 different teams, and they'd come to UNA. And it wasn't just me. We had 3 or 4 guys that they were looking at, so we'd do all those tests, the bench press, the 40, the cones, but they came to your campus and did it. So that's the only difference. We still had a combine, but you didn't go to one big place. They came to your school and did it. Yep.
Drafted in the 11th round by the Washington football team now. Your father, the 15th round back in 1954. There's not a lot of father-son duos that have been drafted into the NFL. Sharing that moment, that memory, how special is it?
Right now, it's probably one of the most special memories I have. You know, with my father passing on at the time, I didn't realize how special it was. You know, I was just excited, you know, and I knew Dad had played. But as years went by and you look back on your career and think, man, how blessed I was I wish I'd have lived in those moments more. Wish I knew then what I know now. But, you know, it was very, very special to look back that, hey, you know, we played in the same county, we played the same position, played the same college, and we both played in the NFL. So you can't get any better than that for family-wise. Yep.
Let's talk about the NFL run. Washington Redskins, Joe Gibbs, the head coach. Take us to training camp.
Yep. We trained at Jim Thorpe College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And it was rough. Boy, them first 3 or 4 weeks before you played your preseason games, we'd have 4 days. I mean, they put you through it, but I learned so much. And those veteran players, you know, I've been watching those guys on Sundays for years, and now I'm up there actually with them. And you know, they were just like guys in college. They took us under their wings, and you know, and helped us. Joe Theismann was a quarterback. He'd stay out there after practice with us rookies and help us try to get better. And Coach Gibbs was probably the finest man you'll ever met. About, you know, after he got out of coaching, he got into NASCAR real big. Well, I went to a NASCAR race, and he had just published that book, and he was there signing his book, and it'd probably been, I think, 31 years. He knew exactly who I was, opened up a book and signed it and gave it to me. That's the kind of man he was.
That's great. As you're going through the NFL process, did you learn any more about your father with his NFL reputation?
Oh, yeah, I did, because Richie Pettibone was a defensive back coach for the Redskins. And he was a defensive back for the Bears, so he had played with Dad. So, you know, he told me all kind of stories with them playing, yeah, and I bump into people in the NFL that had played with Dad. A lot of the coaches then were former players, so, you know, yeah, I made some connections there, yep.
So the Redskins and the Raiders factor in as well. How did your path take you out to Oakland?
Well, after about a year and a half, I never started. I got to play some. I was a backup, and so, you know, your contract comes up back then, you know, unless you were one of those big-time signees, you got yearly contracts. Well, the Raiders picked me up off waivers after about a year and a half, so I got to go to Oakland when they were still playing at Oakland Alameda Coliseum, and Tom Flores was the coach, and that was probably the best experience, because I look back at all the Hall of Famers I got to practice with and live with. You had Ted Hendricks, you had Matt Millen, we had Marcus Allen, you had Jim Plunkett, we had Lester Hayes. That's who I had to line up with against every day, was Lester Hayes. So, you know, there was about, I think, 9 Hall of Famers now was on that team that I got to live with, practice with, and play with, and that was awesome. John Matusak, Lyle Alzado, all those guys were on the Raiders when I went out there, and man, that's something now. That is really something.
A lot of big names there.
Yes.
So going from the NFL, what was next? How did you get into coaching from that point?
Well, when I came through UNA, you know, I got a health, physical education, and recreation degree. I thought about going into, you know, recreational, running the park and things like that, but I got the niche for coaching. I had a double major. I had a history major. I love history, so, you know, Dr. Livingston, who was at that time the head of the PE department, you know, he was my advisor. He'd sit down and go over goals and what you want to do, and he told me he thought I'd make an excellent teacher and excellent coach. I took his advice, went back to UNA another semester and got my teaching certification, and then got into coaching, and man, that's just took off from there.
A lot of stops along the way: Coffee High School, Central High School, Brooks High School, winningest coach in Brooks history. I want to talk about Brawley Stadium. You play in Brawley, you have a lot of big moments here. Coaching here as well. I mean, how was it with it all coming full circle?
It was neat, you know. When I came back to coach at Coffee, and this being our home stadium, it really brought back a lot of memories. And, you know, I took a lot of pride in that, because, you know, we even tried to instill that in our players, you know, that I know how it feels, what you put in on this field. You know, only difference was instead of dressing down there, we dressed on this end, and that really meant a lot to me coming back. That had a lot to do with me coming back to Coffee, just the atmosphere at Brawley, and, you know, the people that were connected to UNA supported Bradshaw and Coffee back then. So, you know, that had a lot to do with me, because I had a really good job at Central. We'd just come off 2 semifinal years, and but, you know, I had some people in the city of Florence. Grady again was one of them, and so I just couldn't pass that opportunity up. So
Brooks High School, your father the principal there, you graduated from there, getting to coach at the same high school you graduated from, and then becoming principal. What does Brooks High School mean to the Hill family?
I have 4 sisters. We all graduates of Brooks High School. My dad was the head football principal there. My mother taught biology there for 30 years. So our whole family grew. That was just a way of life. We went around Brooks High School. And the story, the neat story about it, Brooks' daddy was a principal, and I was the head coach at Central, and that's before I came to Coffee. The head coach at Brooks' job came open, so I applied for it. And, you know, he told me, he said, I can't hire you. I can't hire my own son. He said, when I leave here one day, you'll get the chance to come back here. And he was right, so that happened.
Now getting ready to take over as superintendent in Lauderdale County.
Right.
Football, everything leading up to this. I mean, what can you say just about the Shoals area and what everything means to you?
Well, the Shoals area has been a huge, huge part of my life. I grew up here. I've lived here. My children go to school here. My son works here. I've got grandkids in the Shoals area now. It's been, you know, it's time for me to give back to the Shoals area, because it wasn't for, you know, Lauderdale County, University of North Alabama, and the Shoals area in general, there's no way I'd be where I'm at today. I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed, and you know, I love working with kids because I know what it meant to me to have those mentors growing up and get me where I'm at today. So I love coaching kids. I love teaching kids, and you know, teach them how to be good. You know, not just good ball players and not just good students. That's very, very important. But about being good citizens, being good people, being good mothers, being good fathers, and things like that. That's what I was taught, and I just feel blessed to be able to give that back. Yep.
Jerry Hill, a UNA Lion legend, thank you for the time.
Yep. Lion forever. Go Lions.